book tips. It's Jackie from Jackie's Literary Corner, and it's time for another 7 on Sunday. So I thought I would film this outside. Hopefully no one will be coming out. Any of my neighbors will be coming out to work on their lawns, because then I'll feel a little self-conscious about doing this. But this topic is actually my birthday, and I apologize for that barking. But this is actually on my birthday, which is kind of cool. But the topic for this Sundays is on underrated books. Now I kind of deviate a little bit with books. I picked also some authors that I feel are underrated, authors that I feel like I have to look for videos on those authors. And some of them, of course, are classics, and I feel like classics are definitely books that could potentially be underrated because people are so intimidated by classics, especially when we study them to death in school. And that kind of ruins the appeal of them. And then I feel like some people just feel like they can't read them because the writing is so different and so much more dense. Although, with a little practice, though, if you get used to the writing style, then I feel like you can read them. And the plots are so intriguing and interesting, and they're just as interesting as the plots we have today. I mean, yeah, people are a little different. We're a little different back in the time that classics were written, with like women were more proper and more like they were more worried about doing things that were considered inappropriate. But we still have the same things to deal with. I mean, like dating and all that kind of stuff is just they didn't date as much as we do today. I just really hope no one comes out. I know the neighbors come outside. But, so a lot of these there's a couple authors that I feel are underrated. There's some classics that I feel are underrated, and then there's some series that I feel are underrated on this. Or at least I personally don't hear people talk about them a lot, or like only some people talk about them. Okay, let's see. My list piece, of course, I wrote it all down. Okay, so first, let me talk about one that I actually was reading just now, like literally just 30 minutes ago. And that is Anthony Trollope. I don't not hear a lot about. The only person I've ever heard talk about Anthony Trollope, I mean, maybe there have been other people. I've seen there's been two people that I've heard talk about Anthony Trollope, and that is Steve Donahue and Katie from Books and Things. Hi, Bosh. Well, only the neighbors. Well, my neighbor's dog just came out. But he, as far as I know, they're the only two people that I know that talk about the author, Anthony Trollope. And I know my library has only one Anthony Trollope book, but there are books by Joanna Trollope, who I think is a relative of his. In fact, she does the introduction in this particular one, if you guys can see it. I just realized, though, looking at this, I really hope this still shows up on the screen when I upload this video. So, if it does, then don't worry about me saying this. But if it does, I'm gonna have to refilm it anyway, so it won't matter. But this is the second book in his Barsetshire series. That is kind of about the church in this community of Barchester. The first book is called The Ward, and this is the second book, Barchester Towers. And unfortunately, I'm not exactly halfway. Like, I wanted to use this for the medieval readathon, and I still have 2-3 weeks left, I think. Actually, I think only 2 weeks to finish it. But it's just about this community and the importance of their church. And in the second one, the bishop has just passed away, and his son is thinking he's going to get the title of bishop. But then this new group of people show up that are voted on in the clergy, and now, like, it's kind of an all-out war to see who will get the power. And I think Trollope is just as charming and just as engaging as a Dickens or an Austen. Like, I feel like a lot of people just, those names are simonious to, I don't know if I'm saying the word correctly, to when people, to people, readers, when they talk about classics, but you don't hear, this is the first time really, the last couple years is the first time I've ever really heard of Trollope. And thanks to Katie from Books and Things and Steve Donahue. In fact, Steve Donahue prefers Trollope over Dickens. Now, I still love Dickens. I love them both. And my one thing that I found a little off-putting, a little odd in Trollope's writing is that he talks to the narrator, and it's kind of endearing. But then sometimes in Joanna Trollope, I think she talks about in a little bit in the introduction, that he kind of tells you that, oh, you don't have to worry, everything's gonna be fine for the characters. We just got to give them a little problems and some drama. And I don't know if that's meant to be comical or satirical in any way. Maybe it is, and I'm just not getting it. But it's a little weird, and I feel like it kind of takes away the mystery and the tension, not knowing what's going to happen with the characters, what choices they're gonna make. But either way, the writing is charming and interesting, and I mean, not everybody's interested in church politics or anything like that. But for me personally, this particular conflict is very interesting, and I definitely want to know how things are going to work out. It's definitely something I think about after I read the books. Like, after I read The Warden, I definitely thought about it, about the plot and how things turned out, and I had strong opinions about the characters, and I want to read more. I look forward to reading his other series, the Palliser series, which is about the British Parliament, and then there are some of the standalones, like The Way We Live Now, for instance. And what made me aware of The Way We Live Now, actually, was a few years ago when I bought North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, the miniseries, and there was a preview on either the second disc or the first disc about the miniseries version of The Way We Live Now, which has the actress who played Moaning Myrtle in Harry Potter in it, and I don't know who else names people might recognize. I know the guy, one of the actors who played Poirot from an Agatha Christie adaptation is in it. I think that's who he played. I think he played Poirot. I don't know who else. I don't remember, but that kind of got my attention. That seemed like an interesting, and then I realized. And then one day I saw the book, and I decided to buy it. But anyway, it's very interesting, and just as interesting, just as engaging and intriguing as a Dickens. So the next person is another author that I want to talk about is Kate Morden. I love this author. I always try to bring her up. She is historical. Her books, well, they're kind of historical. They're half historical, half contemporary. Because usually your stories have a dual timeline where we have a contemporary timeline, and and then we have a historical timeline, and they're usually mysteries where our contemporary main character finds out some information about the past, and she is determined to piece it together because she feels a connection to it. And usually she's either related to the person from the past that is involved in the mystery that she's trying to solve, or has met someone who is connected to it. Now, it's not like a procedural or police procedural or detective. It's just someone just puzzling out what happened in the past and trying to understand it. She's not trying to solve the case or anything like that. And I kind of like that. I mean, I love the older, like, Sherlock Holmes detective stories. I don't like the modern police procedural stories. I like the ones with... Although I liked Ruth Ware, and that wasn't police procedural, obviously. That was more of someone trying to understand and figure out... That was more in vein of this, in the direction these go. And her most recent book is The Clockmaker's Daughter. It just came out. And like I said, I've only heard a couple of people talk with this author. Like April from Getting Hooga With It has mentioned her work. And then I think actually Jennifer Brooks just talked about Kate Morton and how she's interested in her. I'm trying to think of... Oh, and Science Mama. She has expressed interest in Kate Morton. She's read at least one of her books so far. I would like to hear more people talk about her. I mean, I know not everybody loves historical fiction, and some people love different... Everybody has different tastes and different genre favorites. But I think she's just... the writing is beautiful. It's like as beautiful as classics, but it's not as challenging to read for those who are not familiar with classics. It's and the mysteries are always intriguing and like it's just so, and it's always so fun to figure it out and piece it all together and to understand it. But it's also can be very bittersweet because a lot of times the past has a very tragic ending, and it didn't get healed. The broken hearts of the past don't get healed until the present, until the contemporary main character fixes it. Like, doesn't fix everything exactly, but she solves it and helps them heal. So this is The Distant Hours, which is kind of a gothic story set during World War II. So next is, okay, finally we're getting to a book. This is an individual book. This part of is part of a series, and that is Malice. I really enjoyed this series this first book in the series, in this Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne, and it kind of had like a Arthurian legend meets Game of Thrones feel to it. Like there was a lot of political intrigue. There was a war going on. There was is meant to be like there's the whole idea of the chosen. There is kind of the whole idea of the chosen one trope, which I know a lot of people are kind of annoyed by that trope. I don't know what people are more annoyed by, the love triangle trope or the chosen one trope. I think those are the least liked. I could be wrong here, but where we have the fallen star is, I think, let me look. What does it say here? Okay, well, they have the Black Sun, and I think that's meant to be the enemy, the bad guy. And in the prophecy, that's the villain is the Black Sun, and then and the Fallen Star or something I can't remember it. I mean, it has been a while, but I'm really enjoying this book and having fun with it. I'm sure a lot of people have, it's not perfect, but it's still such a fun series, and I would love to hear more people talk about it. There is a group I'm in on Goodreads, but I feel like since it's been a while since I've read this first book, and I haven't started the second one yet, I mean, I actually did start it, but I haven't gone back to it, so I feel like I can't be as active as I would like to be in that one. But, yeah, and it's a multi-perspective story. These characters are so interesting, and, like, it's one of those stories where the characters are, very complex and multifaceted. And it's just really fun. I want to hear more people read it. I mean, it's just a typical like kingdom story, and there's also giants, which is really cool. You don't see a lot of stories where the giants have more of a culture. Most of the time, the giants are just the psychics and the brutes that are used. The only other time where I've seen where giants it's hinted that they have a bit of a culture is the Harry Potter series, and even then we only have the half giant Hagrid, and then Madame Maxime. And we in book 5, we actually get a glimpse of their culture. We don't actually see it, but we hear about from Hagrid their culture, which I think was always very interesting. In this one, the giants are more involved. Like, they have more to gain, and there's a war between humans and giants, and the giants are kind of seen as the bad guy. But, of course, we all know things are not that simple. Things are not as black and white. And it's just another kingdom, another kingdom fantasy, typical kingdom fantasy, but it's still so fun. I want to see more people give it a try. And I hope Holly from Holly Hearts Books gets around to it, because I know this is one of the books that she wants to get around to, and I know she has said that she will at some point. And I don't know if Elliot Brooks has gotten around to it either. I think she has talked about it. And I know, actually, even though she hadn't read it, I did not realize that she hadn't read it, but I saw it on her shelf, and it kind of was like a sign to me that, oh, I should get this book and read it. Yet, she had not gotten into it, or I found out sometime later that she had not read it herself. So anyway, thank you, Elliot, for finally being the final sign to get me to read this. And I had such a good time, and I will be reading Valor soon, now that I have Valor, and I have the third one, which is Ruin, and then there's 4 books, so, but I haven't got the 4th book yet. It'd be cool. It would be a nice surprise if Terry saw it on my list and remembered that she had got me the books 2 and 3, and will decide, oh, I'll just go ahead and complete her collection and get the 4th book. Because they said Sunday's my birthday, and she got me quite a few packages, which I might open on this video. I might actually do a video and open them, but I don't know yet. We'll see how I feel on Saturday night into Sunday. I'll be right back. Sorry, my dogs are so weird, like, especially the older one. She will go in and out constantly, and she will always ask to go in, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, I want to go out now, because I realized, oh wait, you're still outside. Okay, so that was Malice by John Gwynne. Next is another classic, but it's a standalone, and it's not an author. And that is, now, as you can see, this is not one I've finished yet, but The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. And even though I haven't finished it yet, I still really enjoy this book. It's one of the first revenge stories, and it's considered classic now, one to be, people find it so intimidating to read, because look at this bad boy. It's a brick. And it's definitely one that would get a good slap from Daniel Greene. But it's essentially about this guy, Edmond Dantes, has a really great life. He's about to promote in his job as a sailor. He has a beautiful fiancée waiting for him back home. But he has some rivals in his fiancée's cousin, whose name I do not remember, and one of his co-workers, a fellow sailor, who's like, I've been at this a lot longer than you have, I'm a veteran, I should be promoted over you, you're just a kid. Because Edmund is 21, I believe. And so they, with this other guy, work together to frame Edmund for being a Bonapartist, because this is during the Napoleonic Wars, when Bonaparte had taken over and was trying to form his own empire. And they frame him for being a Bonapartist, a Napoleon supporter. And he gets sent to the Chateau d'If, which is an island prison. And while he's there, he meets this old priest and becomes friends with him, and the priest educates him. Now, in the movie, he teaches him how to sword fight. But in the book, we do not get that scene. We only get him educating him and on academic things, and they try to escape from Alcatraz style. But the priest is kind of old, and he sadly dies. He probably has a heart attack. He dies, and Edmund uses this as a distraction to escape the Chateau d'If, because either you escape after you die, or you just live there forever. And when he escapes, before he escaped, before the guy died, before the priest died, he told him about this treasure that belongs to him on the Isle of Monte Cristo. So Edmund decides, after meeting some pirates at sea, they sail to the Isle of Monte Cristo, where he discovers treasure and creates a whole new identity as the Count of Monte Cristo, and sails back to where his fiancée and his friends who betrayed him, his ex-best friends who betrayed him. He decides to seek revenge, and also better the life of those who are still his friends. As you can see, I've already read this, but obviously I know the plot because I've seen the movie. But this is such a great classic. And when, I know, like I said, I'm not close to halfway, but not halfway. But I think it's very long and very dense. It's over 1,000 pages. And there's so much going on. You get to the point sometimes when it's like, okay, what does this have to do with Edmund? What is the connection between the Count and this person? What's the relevance? But then, I've been assured after listening to Jennifer Brooks' video that a lot of these people do have there is a connection there. There is a reason that these people are brought up. Even if it seems like non-important to the Count's story, it is important. And it is involved somehow. We just don't know it yet. But and because this was written in what's the copyright date? It's the original copyright date. Well, this first book, this publication was in the 90s. Yep. In the 90s, and then, but let's see where I can find the original. Is the original? You can only see the copyright date of this one, of when this first came out. Where is it? Oh, okay. So 1844 to 46. So I wonder why. So 1844 to. So I guess maybe that's how long it's from 44 to 46 is how long it took. 1844 to 46. So this was around the 1800s, but it's set in the 1700s, and so it's very dense, but it's still such a good engaging story once you get into it. And said the girl who is close to not even at halfway point, but still, once I sit down and start reading it, it's so engaging and intriguing. You just want to know how things are going to work out and stuff. Even though I know the story, I know the basic plot, and basically what ends up happening. But of course, with modern movie adaptations, a lot of times it does differentiate to an extent. Like I was just watching someone that I'm actually going to mention on here as a bonus. I was just watching Mansfield Park, both movie adaptations, 1998 and 2007. And there are some stuff that they left out. In the problem with Mansfield Park, particularly, the main character of Fanny is a hard one to adapt because of her personality is so non-assuming, and just very quiet and very reserved and very submissive. And she's not a well-loved. Among the Austen hardcore fans, she's not as loved because she's no Elizabeth Bennet or she's no Emma, I don't remember Emma's last name. She's not, she's not very independent or very strong. She's like the ideal woman of the time here, but by today's standards, I hate to say it, but considered boring. I personally love her, especially because I feel like myself, along with my best friend, who just confirmed my beliefs, we are very similar to Fanny Price in a lot of ways. We can relate to her. But anyway, so yeah, the writing stuff's a little more challenging. It takes me a while to get into it. That's why I just need to sit down and focus only on this book. And I think maybe after this month, I should do that. it always, in the back of my mind, it always bothers me. You think, oh, I should read, even though it's not about the quantity of the books you read, it's about the quality of the books you read. I always feel like, oh, there's so many other books I should be reading right now, and, I shouldn't be focusing on one big book because that will take me forever. I can read multiple books at the same time, but anyway, I'm gonna get back to talking about doing the tag because or the 7 on Sunday, because I'm getting distracted, but yeah, I recommend checking this one out. It's so, especially because at one time it was considered sensationalism, and now it's a classic. It's considered a book that's very intimidating to read, yet at one time it was considered a trashy, like a Game of Thrones, or, even like a I'm gonna say in Twilight or Sarah J. Maas book. Like today, those, or like an Outlander, would be considered sensationalism. And this one was one of those types of books at the time, but now it's a book that we study. It's a book that we're fascinated with, that, has made an impact on society. Okay, so next the author himself is not underrated. He's very popular, especially now. But this is one of his books that is not as popular, and I don't get it, because I really enjoyed it. It was great. I guess it's not considered as cool, as amazing as some of his other books. But Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is another one that kind of involves religion, religious views, and religious politics. And it's just, for some reason, it's not as popular as, like, Mistborn, or his new big magnum opus of a series, Stormlight Archives. But this one and Warbreaker, I think, are, like, I'm really enjoying Warbreaker too, which stupid wind just blew my list off. Put that there. But like, I love both. I'm enjoying this one, and I really love this one. It's essentially about about this world where there's this city called Elantris, that they had godlike powers, but something happened where they lost their status as gods and became less than human creatures that are like flying apart and decrepit and stuff. So the city was walled off and hidden from the world. And people will, if you start showing signs of becoming like these people, then you get thrown in there. So, we have, in this world, there is the Prince Raoden, and he is going to marry this woman who is just from another kingdom, and they have been in communication, but he gets the disease that reflects that you're infected, where you become an Elantrian, and his father throws him in there, telling the world that he's dead. He gets to Elantris, and he realizes that he makes friends with this guy named Galadon, who shows him the world, and he's kind of a glasses half empty kind of person. And Raoden, who's a very, he was just a born leader, like, not just because he was a prince, but his personality. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Kelsier from Mistborn, and he decides to help the Elantrians, because these Elantrians are actually, like, they don't actually need to eat or anything like that, but they always feel like they're starving and stuff like that, so he decides to help them adapt and gives them purpose. And meanwhile, and he's also trying to figure out what led to them to this despair, to this situation that they're in. Meanwhile, his bride-to-be, Sarene, I think that's how you say it, I don't know if that's correct, I think some people have pronounced it differently, decide to surprise him and show up in the city, in his kingdom, but when she gets there, she's told by his father, Iadon, that Raoden has died, but she's still considered his wife, and now she's a widow. So she has to adapt to her situation, and she decides, because she's a resourceful person and is tired of feeling like she's different, she decides to get involved in the politics of this kingdom and make friends with the nobles. And they're a little reluctant at first, but they, work with her because they both are worried, concerned about Iadon, and he's running the kingdom to the ground. So she's working with the nobles and gaining their trust. But, of course, she still feels like an outsider because she's always been different amongst people. And there's this whole thing about her being really tall, which I think is really funny. And meanwhile, you have another character who's kind of a priest in this world named Hathren. And his religion, he's trying to get his people to support his religion because he's led to believe if they don't start believing his religion, then they're all screwed. And these people are going to suffer and die. So he has to convert them to his religion. And this guy shows up. And what is his name? What is his name? Let me see if I can. His name is. I'm trying to find his name. His religion is Jareth, by the way. Jareth is Hathorn's religion. It's like Deneth or something. Let me see if I'm trying to find his name. Where is his name? Dilaf. I don't know. Comes to join them. Of course, there's more to Dilaf than what it seems. He seems very submissive, but then Halfdan starts to realize that Dilaf is a threat to his power. But it has so much both intrigue and, dogs. See, this is what I mean! This is what I mean. The girl dog will constantly go in and out. But this is such an interesting, and of course, leave it to Brandon Sanderson to come up with a unique magic system with letters and symbols. It's really interesting and cool, and I would love to do, like, if it was a real magic system, I would enjoy doing the research. But since it doesn't exist, I'm living through Raodom's research and learning more about it and understanding. I love this kind of scene when people explain a certain religion. Like, even if we don't get a lot, like, it's not a huge monologue of information, which is good because no one really wants that, but just learning bits and pieces and hints of the world and trying to figure it out. Like scenes where characters are trying to study something, trying to understand something, are some of my favorite moments. And I love all these characters. Like, Raoden is such a sweetheart and so honorable and noble, and always trying to help people and understand things. And he's also very charming. And then Sarene, you just feel so sympathetic for her because she's trying so hard to fit in, to please everybody, but also, like, do what she thinks is right. And stand up for herself. And to prove that, she may be a little different in her thinking, but that's not a bad thing. And then, of course, Hathren as an antagonist is just, he's also really interesting, and you kind of understand him and his motives and his fears. And I always find that people who are motivated by their religious beliefs, those are always very interesting characters. Like, he made me, the whole time I was reading this, Hathren kind of made me think of Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the anime movie, not the original book. Because I DNF'd that book. I couldn't do it. It was just too boring for me. I tried and I couldn't do it. But Hathren reminded me of that guy, of like a younger Frollo, because Frollo's an old man who has a really Jones for Esmeralda. He's a pervy old man. Of course, he blames her because she's a beautiful, voluptuous woman. She's a gypsy, or I should say, Romani, because I learned recently that the term, I did not realize this, I admit, but Dude, the term gypsy is actually used offensively. It's an offensive term. I did not know that. So, the correct is Romani. But, but yeah, Hawthorne kind of reminded me, and I think he did kind of get a little bit of a crush on Serene. I think he was fascinated by her, and I think he kind of liked her. But of course, nothing would come of it anyway, because she didn't like him in that way. In fact, she didn't trust the guy. This is such an interesting story. I mean, I just don't know why, I guess if you have to pick a least favorite, then maybe this is it for a lot of people. Their least favorite of Brandon Sanderson. And people, criticize the writing and say it's not as good as his later works. But I would have to read his works side by side, like read them at the same time for me to determine if this was not as good as, like, Mistborn's writing, or, I don't know. So, yeah, Elantris, I think that's underrated. That's not talked about enough. Okay, next is number 6 is a fantasy series that I've just read the second book, and that is the Seven Realms series. This is the first book, The Demon King. And I think compared to some of the YA back in the day, this is an early YA. This is published in 2009. This was early 2000s, and I think it's actually pretty good for a, early 2000s fantasy. You have, in this world, you have, it's ruled by this princess, this queen. It's a queendom, and they basically rule. People who use magic, wizards and stuff, are seen as bad guys or people you can't trust. But the queen is also advised by a guy who's a wizard, and the princess wants to do more for the kingdom than what her mother. Her mother is being whispered in the ear by this wizard, and she's not doing a good job at ruling the kingdom. And her daughter, Princess Reza, wants to make a difference and help this kingdom because she's starting to see the suffering of the people in the kingdom and wants to actually help them and do something instead of just sitting around looking pretty, getting a king, marrying someone. And when her mom tries to get her to marry a wizard, she realized something is not right, because marrying a wizard is not good. It's forbidden. And of course, you find out that the reason why she was attracted to Mike the wizard is because he was using magic on her. So she runs away with her personal guard, Aemon, who she has a crush on, and in the second book, they head to the magic school, or a military slash magic school, where she hides there in the military school, because she figures it will be the safest place for her to hide, and she can also learn the tools necessary for her to be a good leader. And then you have another set of characters, Han Alistair. I think it really is Han, but I don't like it. But his full name is Hansen, or it looks like Hansen. So, of course, I guess you could say it Hansen. But anyway, Alistair, he is this boy living with a tribe of people who actually where Reza's father comes from, the same type of people, and they're kind of Native American inspired, or at least I get Native American vibes, and people do not trust them, and they're considered savages. There's all these stupid beliefs about them, like they do everything naked and stuff like that, and they're just savages. And Han has his best friend Dancer, and he was also always known as Cuffs Alistair because he's a street thug in the city outside of beyond the tribes, the tribe clans where the tribes live, and he's kind of he's a tough street thug, but he realizes and he's always wearing these cuffs on his wrist, and that's where he gets his name and reputation. But then he realizes that he can't take care of his mom and sister being a street thug. So he puts up his street thug cred and focuses more on taking care of his family and learning with the tribes people. But then it turns out by the end of this book, you find out there's more to Han than he even realized. But that's probably not the best summary, and I probably should have said more than I should have said. But I'm sure that Jade from, I can't remember her channel name. I know her first name is Jade, and she's also part of the World Hoppers group with Daniel Green and Elliot Brooks. But she would probably do a better job at describing this book without giving away too much. But this is a fun series, and like I said, compared to a lot of the YA that came out during the time when this book was published, it's actually, I think it's pretty good. I mean, it still has some cliche and tropey stuff, but it's really fun. It has a lot of political intrigue, and it has a bit of a Native American representation in it. I don't know how good it is. I mean, but and the magic is really cool, and there's not all that love triangle drama in it. I mean, it is there, but it's not. It focuses more on Reza and Han and their journey and what they're meant to do, and the war in this world that's going on, and all the political intrigue, not just the romantic drama of Reza and Han. Although that's in the series, but it's not as bad as, as some series. And maybe if I say it's not as bad as Twilight, then maybe that will get people to read it more. I like all the characters, even the antagonistic characters are very interesting. I don't like them as people, but they are very interesting characters. And it's a really fun series, and I like the school system that is introduced in the second book. We have the Mistwork School, which is the magic school, and then you also have, I can't remember what the military school is, the military academy, and I thought it was so cool to see Reza be part of that school and get that kind of education in the second book. Because you don't get to see that kind of stuff in a lot of YA books. I don't see female characters doing that kind of stuff, that kind of learning. Or if you do, it's not necessarily at a school. But it's a fun series. I think there's 4 books, and then she has a lot of spin-off sequel/spin-off series. And I have one of the books I do have one of her spin-off series. And the funny thing is, so I bought my cousin, I thought was kind of interested in reading, but truthfully, I don't think he is as interested as I thought. I got him the first book in another series by the author, and I looked it up to see if it's involved in this world, and it's not involved in this world, so if I never got around to it, that's okay. As far as if I wanted to read a book that had to do with this world, wanted to make sure I read everything from that world. But, anyway, this is it's fun. I really enjoy this series, and I hope a lot more people check it out. It's just a very fun series. Look it up if you feel like if my description of it is not thorough enough or not a good explanation, then at least look this up on Goodreads or something. I think it's worth checking out. So that's The Demon King is the first book by Selena Williams-Chima. It's the Seven Realms series. And there's only 4 books, so it's not a long series. Okay, so before I get to the bonus, because I do have 2 bonus ones, the last one I want to talk about is another one of those authors that you're familiar with. Her other work is very popular, but not necessarily. There's a series by her that's not, I don't hear a lot about. She's one that I've heard from, Jean's Bookish Thoughts. Jean Bookish Thoughts. I've heard her talk about the series. And this Temeraire is that is Naomi Novak's The Temeraire series. She is the author of Spinning Silver and Uprooted, and I hear about those books all the time. People have a lot of opinions on those. They're either like booktube darlings or polarizing books. I don't know which, but this is her. I think this one came first. This is a series set during the Napoleonic Wars. And in this one, it's what if we had dragons during this time? What if dragons were real? And they had dragon firepower involved in this, which actually, I was telling my dad and mom about this series one time, and my dad had a very interesting food for thought that, thinking about, thinking about how the firepower that the dragons would give the people in the war, and, how it might affect the war if dragons really did exist. Because they're such powerful beasts, and some of them can spit acid, and some of them can spew fire, and they're so big, and how they can fly, and all that. So, thinking about that while reading that, it's an interesting thing to consider how powerful these beasts are in this world. Again, I really hope this video shows up. I hope it's just that in this light it's not good. I hope it doesn't. But anyway, so our main character is Will Lawrence, and he is a Navy captain, and him and his crew come across a ship that is sailing to France to deliver a dragon egg to the Emperor Napoleon. So they commandeer the ship, steal the egg, and are waiting for it to hatch. And so you have to assign someone to the dragon egg, so they will bond with the dragon. And just as they assign someone, the dragon is born dragon spots Lawrence instead and bonds with him. And he names the dragon Temeraire. In this first book, it's about the dragon training they receive, how Lawrence has to go from being a Navy guy to being an aviator. And he receives that training in Scotland, and there's this prejudice between the aviators and the Navy, and there's a tension between them, and it takes a while for Lawrence to win over some of these people. And it's all about him adapting to his new situation and bonding with Temeraire, and actually forming a strong friendship. He even teaches Temeraire things and educates him, and Temeraire shows a fondness for learning things and reading books. And what I like is that the dragons in here are highly intelligent and each have individual personalities. And then later in the series, we explore other types of dragons and get to know experience other dragons. And there's this whole issue of the dragons of Temeraire learning about freedom and independence and wanting that for the dragon species. And some of the dragons are so used to and so contented by living as pets to humans that it's hard. Temeraire is trying to convert them throughout the series, at least the first 4 books in the series I've read books. The first 3 books in the series, I've only read the 3 books because they don't have book 4 yet. Which I'm hoping that's another one. That's a birthday gift. But in the first 3 books, Temeraire learns about that and tries to convert the other dragons, but it's a struggle, and they're in the middle of a war, and Lawrence has to remind Temeraire that, yes, he wants Temeraire to have his freedom, but they're in this war, so the dragons and the humans need to cooperate and work together. And, Lawrence is being a human himself. He sees the human side, but he's also willing to understand the other side of the issue with the dragons, and to understand Temeraire's point of view as much as his own point of view and his friend's point of view on dragons and their freedom. And he also understands that it won't happen overnight. This change won't just instantly happen. So it's just a very intriguing, looks at societal issues, and of course, any story to me that has a setting like this, that introduces magic, is such a cool idea, such a cool concept. Like, the idea of, what if magic existed? You always have stories, medieval set stories that have like magical mythology and stuff, and it's magic versus Christianity. You have that all the time in these stories, but it'd be interesting. It's always interesting to see it in other settings, not just a medieval England type setting, but also in like this is the I believe this war happened during the 1700s, which is the same with this one. This takes place then. So, and actually it says, like, it's enthralling me, like Jane Austen playing Dungeons and Dragons with Aragon's Christopher Polini. I love that blurb. And this one has, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 9 books in the whole series, so it's kind of a long series, but it's a fun series. So those are the 7 books. Oh wait, I forgot. I wanted to include some bonus. I still feel like there's not there's other. So I also want to talk about how Pride and Prejudice is Jane Austen's most popular work, but I want to hear about some of the other ones. Like I said, I just read and watched the 2 movie adaptations of Mansfield Park, and I feel like I don't hear a lot about that one. And it might have something to do with Fanny not being a beloved character, a main character. And I don't hear a lot about. I mostly hear about Emma and Pride and Prejudice, and occasionally Sense and Sensibility. And I want to hear more about even Persuasion, and I'm not a big fan of Persuasion. The plot I find honestly a little bit boring, but I would definitely love to hear more about it. And more about Mansfield Park. I mean, people, there's so many modern adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, and there was I was watching the 2007 version adaptation of Mansfield Park, and of course I was looking at the comments below, and someone said they would love to make a modern adaptation, and they would do away the whole cousins plot point, because Fanny and her love interests are actually cousins. Of course, back then that was perfectly normal, but, she was saying that, I'll do away with that part. And I'd be definitely curious to see a modern. In fact, when I was watching, I was thinking about that right before not too long before I read the comment. It's I was thinking about what could be done that would make it more modern. Like, how would Fanny be, what would be a modern interpretation of her living with her cousins, or living with this family, and I'm trying to think of what could be, how would they do away with the cousins thing, and maybe she's not even cousins with people, maybe they're friends or something, and maybe Fanny is even, they could introduce immigration in it, maybe she's from the Middle East, or something, because that's, considering the war we're having with the Middle East, struggles we're having with the Middle East, I think that would be interesting. See a modern. I would love to hear, like I said, not just that one, but Persuasion, even though it's not my most favorite of Austen's work. And I'm surprised Lady Susan isn't talking. I know it's not an actual. Lady Susan isn't a novel per se, but I'm surprised people don't talk about that one more, because Lady Susan is definitely a very dynamic character, and she's she's kind of like Emma in a way, like an older version of Emma. I feel that's the impression I get from her. If Emma, what happened at the end of Emma did not happen, and she didn't grow as a person. Lady Susan kind of reminds me of what Emma could have become. Which I haven't seen the new version of Emma, and I have not seen the new version of Little Women. I need to get both of those from Redbox one day. But anyway, or just wait until they come on TV. But yeah, I want to see some of Austen's other work talked about, other than Pride and Prejudice and Emma. I want to see some of her other. And then the other bonus is one that I actually, I have an omnibus of Jane Austen, but I'm not bringing that book out here. This is a big book. But I also would like to hear more people talk more about Edith Wharton. like, there's not enough conversations about her and her work. Her work is so interesting. It's kind of depressing at times, but it's very charming. The writing is very charming. It's like kind of in the cusp between the original classics and then the modern classics of writing style. And I think it would be interesting, especially because, like, I definitely have given Ethan Frome another chance. Like, the first time I read it, I was bored by it. I did not like, and I was like, that's it? That's the ending? But, because we had studied it. But now I have a newfound respect for it. Although I like Summer more than I like Ethan Frome. And I actually need to read some of her the ones that are in here, the others that are in here, which is The Eyes, Afterward, Fearful, and The Triumph of the Night. I need to read those stories as well. And then I have another collection of hers that have, like, the ones that start with Old New York. And I have two of her novels as well. I don't know if there's any more work by Edith Wharton that I need to get. But I really love her writing style. And her stories are so interesting, and it looks like Dickens, and also it comments and critiques her society. I think most classic authors do that. Like, a lot of them, their critiques, because Trollope also does that too, I feel like that his novels are meant to do that. So I feel like a lot of classic authors do that. They create, like, it's like they knew that their society was dysfunctional and unjust at times, and a little weird. Like, they knew ahead of time. Maybe that comes from them being authors. Maybe they were a little ahead of time, their time. Maybe that stems from the fact that they were writers and they observe people and study people, understand them. Like, I think maybe that's why. And I'm curious about any of today's. Well, I guess there are authors today that are like that like, look at today's work, and I'm sure a lot of those books will be considered today's classics. A lot of the books today will be considered classic stuff tomorrow. I feel like it'll be definitely, like, I feel like The Circle by David Eggers would be considered a classic someday. Maybe that's the one I should have told him. Because I was watching. I'm subscribed to this channel. I don't remember their channel name, but I've watched some of their videos on classics and what is considered a classic, and one of his suggestions in the comments below talk about what you consider what you think will be considered a classic by tomorrow's standards. And I did say Harry Potter. He disagreed. We debated a little, but then I couldn't keep going with it because I kind of started to see his point, which is always so frustrating because I want to defend my reasoning, but then I realized, but I know it's not a bad thing to see someone's point and be like, okay, you're like, change your mind. It's not a bad thing. It's like, dang it, that was such a weak argument on my part, but The Circle might have been a better option. I don't know, though. I don't hear a lot about that one either. So that one is another one that I would love to hear more. I would be curious to hear more about The Circle by David Eggers. But anyway, yeah, Edith Wharton's so great. I've loved her work so far. I'm definitely gonna read more. But yeah, so those are books that I consider underrated that needs to be talked about more on BookTube, the Bookish community. I will post the link to the Goodreads group if you guys are interested in hearing more about underrated, hear more about this. And if you want to participate in the Goodreads 7 on Sunday group, it's like top 5 Wednesday. It's just more topic, more answer, more, instead of just 5, you pick 7. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up, click subscribe if you have not already, and click the bell notification if you want to know when I post new videos. I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.